There is so much more to the ancient Greek religion than the familiar faces of Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, or their many, many children. In fact, there are a lot of major Greek gods whose names most people will never have heard of, and even some whose existence has been all but forgotten. Most people know of Demeter, the Earth Mother, who weeps for her daughter Persephone, and they know that in some versions of the myth, she gives humanity the gift of grain, and the seasons as compensation for her friend Hades is kidnapping of the young maiden. But what most people do not know is that Demeter actually had two other daughters, the once great goddesses who gave humanity the knowledge of letters and the art of war, respectively. These are the three Moirai, the three Norns of Greek mythology. They were the daughters of the Titan god Cronus and the Titan goddess Rhea, the same parents as Zeus. So they were sisters to him, as well as to his 5 other siblings who were also cast into the great abyss by their father. And while it is true that the Moirai were rescued by Gaia, the personification of the earth, she was unable to save them from their father's terrible wrath. He flung each one of them down into the underworld where they were raised by the Titans, Cronus and Rhea. That's right, the same Titans who had birthed them, except that they were now imprisoned in Tartarus, the deepest, darkest part of the underworld, alongside their brothers, the defeated Cyclopes and Hecatonchires. But somehow the Moirai managed to escape this prison and return to the surface, where they made their home on Olympus. It was here that they wove their famous web of fate, one thread for each mortal upon which they would plot their lives, determining the day and manner of their deaths. And each Moirai had a particular specialty. Clotho was the spinner, holding the spindle and spinning the threads of fate. Lachesis was the measurer, who decided how long each life would last. And Atropos was the cutter, whose shears were final and unyielding. And it was said that no one could escape the web of fate, not even the gods themselves. And indeed, the Fates had a terrible showdown with the great trickster god Hermes, after whom the messenger god named his followers, the heralds, or hermaphrodites, after himself. Hermes was already renowned across the cosmos for his trickery when he went down to the garden of the Hesperides to steal one of the golden apples. Now, as punishment for stealing, he had to complete a task set before him by the dragon guarding the garden. And that task was to lead the 3 Moirai out of their cave without them knowing it was him. This proved easy enough, as the Fates were blind and did not notice him at all until he was already gone. However, the moment that Hermes got back to Olympus and bragged about his accomplishments, the Fates found him and demanded that he should be punished for his insolence. But the gods were on Hermes' side in this dispute, and ultimately the Fates were forced to retreat back to their caves in defeat. So while the Fates did control the destiny of every living thing, even the gods could not deny Hermes his glory. The ancient Greeks believed that the highest form of wisdom came not from knowing everything, but from knowing nothing, or at least nothing beyond your station. Because of this, no one truly knew anything about the true nature of the universe. Only guesses and theories passed down through oral tradition. This is why when a god chose to reveal something to a human, it was considered an honor, a blessing, and often a prophecy, like the one delivered to King Sisyphus by the god Apollo. See, Apollo came to King Sisyphus and said, "O mortal, I shall grant you the gift of prophecy." But Sisyphus, being king, thought himself equal to the gods and replied, "Don't insult me with such a petty gift. I already know all things, or at least think I do." Enraged by this hubris, Apollo yanked the gift of prophecy back from Sisyphus and instead bestowed it upon one of Sisyphus's courtiers, a man by the name of Manto. Of course, Sisyphus didn't take this lying down, and after summoning up all of his courage, he tried to strike the god down. But Apollo simply laughed, summoned his silver bow, and shot the king right in the rear. Now, depending on the version of the myth, Apollo either paralyzed Sisyphus with a dart dipped in the venom of a snake, or he cursed the king so that he would never die. Either way, the god had won. and Sisyphus was doomed to spend eternity trapped within his own body, both alive and dead, dependent on others for all things, unable to interact with the world around him. This is the origin of the word Sisyphean, meaning hopelessly repetitive, and the image of Sisyphus rolling his boulder up the hill only to have it roll back down every time is emblematic of our perceived lack of progress in life and the futility of our efforts. Now, if you're enjoying this video and you want to see more of these Greek myths and legends, then make sure to hit that subscribe button. Every time you do that, it helps us reach more of our audience, which means that we can make more videos that explore these strange and fascinating myths. In some tellings, the hero Perseus slew Medusa with the help of the gods, but in others, he needed the aid of another type of divine being, the primordial deities called the Hadoi. Now, if you've watched our video on Medusa, which you can click over here to watch right now, then you might remember that she was eventually slain by the hero Perseus. And this happened because Medusa had done something that offended Athena, who sought revenge against her. What exactly that was is not quite certain. Some sources say that Medusa stole Athena's necklace, but others claim it was Poseidon who raped her in Athena's temple. Either way, Athena was mad, and when the hero Perseus approached her for aid in his quest to slay Medusa, she denied his request unless he could complete a very difficult task. She told him to go to the far eastern ocean and find the three Hadoi, the personifications of wind, rain, and mist, and bring them back to her as a gift. And the only way he could do that was to capture them inside jars. And the Hadoi weren't just incredibly powerful deities, they were also immortal. They had existed since the dawn of time and would continue to live forever. But Perseus was able to catch them in jars anyway, thanks to some special equipment given to him by Hermes, the messenger god, and then brought them back to Athena. And the goddess was so pleased with this gift that she agreed to help Perseus slay the Gorgon. Now, there is a problem with this myth, though. We don't really know what happened to the Hadoi after Athena received them. We know that she used their powers to help Heracles during his labors, specifically to fuel his bow and arrows and sustain him during times of great weariness. But we don't know what happened to them after that. Did Athena simply hold on to them forever? Did she eventually let them go? Or did she imprison them forever? Well, we simply do not know. If you look at any piece of ancient Greek artwork depicting the goddess Nemesis, you will always see her trampling on a Trojan warrior. This is because Nemesis was the goddess of divine retribution, especially as it pertained to the ancient Greeks' greatest enemy, the Trojans. She was also associated with the Erinyes, or Furies, goddesses who punished those who broke the law or betrayed oaths. But Nemesis was not like the Erinyes. In fact, she wasn't even Greek. She hailed originally from the land of the Persians, and when the Greeks overthrew the Persians, Nemesis became a symbol of their victory. But later still, as the Roman Empire rose and conquered Greece, she became associated with Rome. In fact, the Romans equated her with their own goddess, Bellona, who represented war and bloodshed. So clearly, Nemesis was a deity who changed with her worshippers. But what about her worshippers? Who were they? Well, we know that the cult of Nemesis was widespread across Greece, and we know that they built temples and sanctuaries for her all over the place. One of the most important sanctuaries was located at Rhamnus, and it is here that we get our most famous myth involving the goddess. You see, the city of Athens was once held hostage by the Amazons, and only the bravest of men could hope to save the city. Now, there were many brave Athenians, but none was braver than the hero Theseus, who volunteered for the task. When he arrived at the banks of the river Alpheus, however, the river god told him that he must first seek out and sacrifice to the goddess Nemesis before attempting to rescue the city. But Theseus was impatient, and instead of going to find Nemesis, he charged straight into the Amazonian camp, and as soon as he did, he was surrounded by warriors who beat him with clubs until he was half dead. And had he not been rescued by a satyr, he would have died right there. As it was, though, the satyr carried Theseus to the river, where the water nymphs healed his wounds, and he became the bravest of the brave, and he went on to defeat the Amazons and rescue Athens.